Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Big League Breakdowns. We are halfway through the postseason. The division series wrapped up its final game today. And for the first time since the new playoff format started, we have three top seeded teams that have advanced. Unfortunately, my team is not one of them. So we're going to talk about each of the games that have happened this past week and also a little bit of predictions as to what we think will happen in the championship series. Tonight, it is me and my co-host, Jonathan. Say hi,
Yeah,
Jonathan.
you mentioned that we are halfway through the postseason. We're also half a crew here tonight. Uh,
Yeah,
Meaning that the other two are off gallivanting around.
yeah, Bobby was too sorrowful to talk about the Phillies. And of course, Tyler and his gritty Tigers.
The
And
Gritty
he's not
Tigers.
here to talk about them. Nope, they lost. They are the Tigers now. They're in trouble. They get the full name.
Oh, the no more of the Gritty Kitties. No more.
Don't ever. I hate that. Stop. That sounds horrible to me. I
It's
know why you
funny.
say it. It sounds horrible.
It's funny.
It's funny because it sounds horrible to me.
I'm so sorry. Don't blame me. Blame Twitter.
I didn't say it was your fault, but I don't have to like it either way.
I blame Elon.
Fair enough. So we're gonna get started with Saturday's game and the Tigers facing the Guardians. The Gritty Tigers just couldn't pull this one out as they lose the last two games of the series, with the big blow in the series coming today in game five when Lane Thomas hit a go-ahead grand slam against Tarek Skubal, who was practically unhittable this
They
entire postseason.
they said on the broadcast it had been a month to the day since he had given up a home run.
That's just how
September
effective he is. Yeah.
September 12th. We're recording this on October 12th. September the 12th was the last home run he gave up, or last game he gave up a home run in. And this guy, of all their pitchers, who would have thought that it'd be their ace and the Cy Young winner who would essentially give it up for them? But I mean, honestly, when it comes down to it, I don't think the Tigers have anything to be upset about.
No, I mean, if the Guardians were going to beat the Tigers, this was really what they had to do. You take away that grand slam, it's a 3-2 ball game in favor of the Tigers. They had to chip
Yeah.
away at the Tigers ace, and instead of chipping away, they just put the dagger right in them.
Well, I mean, honestly, it's not surprising. I thought it was going to happen when Ramirez was at the plate, at bat earlier, literally right before. I forget who hit the grand slam, but I remember watching. I'm like, oh,
Lane
he's
Thomas.
okay. I remember watching Ramirez up at the plate. And I'm going, he's gonna just yank this right over the fence, and he almost did. He almost hit an oppo boppo down the line, but it went foul, and then he got hit in the elbow.
Yeah, they got plunked for
And
it.
then
Nice.
Yeah, and then Lane Thomas comes up and just demolishes the ball
Mhm.
about 500 feet high and about three or four rows back.
Mhm. Yeah. No, we knew going into this series that it was going to be a tight matchup because you had two very similarly built teams facing against one another, and one of them has been really hot in the second half, while the other had the division lead but was a little over 500.
Yeah,
But
but
were
they
you
were
at
also
all surprised,
consistent.
John?
No,
Who
they were
was
consistent.
the
I
Guardians in the second half were like a similar record to the Royals. They were probably within 5 games over 500.
Yeah, but if you look at the overall of the season, they had been the most consistent team. They didn't really have a lot of highs. They didn't have a lot of lows. They had been steady as far as the top of the division. I mean, I think they started out slow a little bit, but then once they took the lead, they didn't give it up. So, I mean, I said at the beginning of
They
the
almost did
series,
though. They had one day where they had lost the first 3 games of a 4 game series versus the Royals, and they were actually tied for first. So
yeah.
they were pretty damn close. And then the Royals had their ups and downs where they would win like four, then lose five, and then win five and lose three. It was kind of an interesting stretch.
Well, we know what they say about almost. It only
Mhm.
counts in two areas of the world: horseshoes and
Yep.
hand grenades.
Anyway, but were
Anyway,
you surprised at all, John, that this ended up being a 5 game series by the Tigers, or do you think this was always going to be kind of a down to the wire matchup?
I thought it'd be down to the wire. honestly, when the Tigers didn't win Game 4, I just was just like they're not going to win this series. It to me, it was more so I was more so shocked that the Guardians came back, being that the Tigers essentially had two opportunities to put away. If you really look at the
Yeah.
series, if you look at it as a series being up 2-1, and then it being tied 2-2 going into today.
Mhm.
But like, yeah, I mean, when you look at the Guardians and how consistent they've been and how consistent the um the overall just quality of play from Quan, especially at the beginning of the season, Ramirez has been steady. That's really the key to their success and was their key to their success this year, in terms of getting this far, is that they've been consistent. Now the Tigers, as we know, went on this heater, and I think
Mhm.
they just finally ran out of gas. I mean, it was bound to happen. It's unfortunate, but it lasted what, a month and a half, 2 months.
Basically 2 months. Yeah.
Yeah, they were arguably the hottest team in baseball, and now I'm curious as to what next year holds for them. But I mean, you know, we'll have to see. I guess keeping Scooball and not trading him was probably the best thing they could have done, because now they can build off of this foundation and try and
Mhm.
actually win the division next year.
Mhm. Do you see this though as a sign that the Tigers have finally turned a corner as an organization because they've had a few years where it seems like they're improving, then they've taken a step back, then they take a forward, then a step back? Or do you think this was more of a fluke season? I don't want to necessarily take away from the Tigers, but I also want to make aware that the Twins really fell apart late in the season. And you had the Red Sox and Mariners, especially the Mariners, as very uneven teams. And the Mariners, of course, as we all know, lost the division to the Astros, even though they had been holding it for practically half the season. So, do you think that this was more of a sign of the future for the Tigers, or just that they were taking advantage of some other teams' mistakes?
So I want to go back to you bringing up the Mariners. That's an example of a team that, was in similar shoes, not too far in the past, about a year or two ago, where we thought, okay, this is the Mariners. They're young. They came in as this wild card team. They came back against the Blue Jays. Now they're
Mhm.
going up. Now they're gonna turn the corner here. They're gonna build around J Rod, and they're gonna and we haven't. They're going to tear down the AL West, and we haven't seen that. So for the Tigers, there's a lot of question marks in the sense of, is this a fluke or is this something to build off of? You obviously want it to be something to build off of, but in baseball, it's so fluky, and the Tigers don't, outside of Scooball, they don't really have a ton of household, like, big names, and that's really what it helps with when you're really looking to turn the corner. Like, look at the Phillies, for example. Before Harper got there, before the Harper signing, they were coming around the bend a little bit, and then they signed him, then they signed Schwarber, then they signed Realmuto. Like, it just, like, it kept snowballing there for them, and
Mhm.
they turned that corner to where they became the best team in baseball this year. I mean, as a tease, like when we discussed it, that obviously didn't help them in this series, but they got to the World Series 2 years ago, so they turned that corner in that sense. So that's another example. So if I was the Tigers, you want to, if I was a Tigers fan, I would want them to build off of this year, go get some guys, spend some money, maybe trade for some top prospects. As I hit my mic, um, go and trade for some top prospects, do something to really give me an idea that you're going to turn the corner here, and not be the Mariners of resting on your laurels and just being like, okay, well, if we just stay with the status quo, we'll be fine.
Mhm. Do you think it's possible the Tigers may be managing their organization in the near future like a Rays team? Because I mean, if you look at that pitching staff, especially, you have Tarek Skubal, and that was really kind of it for the postseason. He was your one true starter. The rest of it
Yeah.
was like an opener and then a bulk innings or a starter that just came in an inning later type of thing. And even your lineup, as it was questioned a lot at times, or I shouldn't really say question, but was left some people kind of puzzled, but it was like, hey, this is the Tigers way, especially in the wild card series where they would have certain matchups and people sitting versus righty lefty splits, but it worked out, and it was just the Tigers' way of doing things. Do you think they're going to kind of stick with that structure for the team moving forward, or do you think they might try and test their luck and try to have at least somewhat of a bigger splash like the Javier Baez signing a few years back, which absolutely did not work out and is,
Yeah,
as you
there's
can, it is
still
hilarious. It is downright
they
hilarious.
paid him to go away.
I mean, and it got him to nearly got him to the championship series. So maybe
Yeah,
there is
yeah.
some merit to
No, I
that.
look, here's the thing. The Tigers are a mid-market team. They don't need to be a Rays. The Rays are such a small market, and this is such a storied franchise that goes back, you know, almost 100 years. So you got to look at it like that. There's no reason they can't be a higher mid-market team such as the Brewers. And I'm not saying they need to go out and suddenly spend millions upon millions and go sign Juan Soto in the offseason. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that there's no reason they can't be a mid-market team where they can go get a top prospect or they can go and get a you know a top free agent and build around Scooble, build around whoever that top free agent is in terms of your bats and everything like that. Maybe it's an Anthony Santander. Please don't. But just as an example of somebody, or because I don't think they can afford Juan Soto. I don't think they would be in that sweepstakes. But that's not the point. The point of the matter is that the Tigers, when you look at it, there's no reason that they have to be the Rays. If they want to play like the Rays in terms of, nickel and diming this, in terms of their approach at the plate and, always being gritty, that's fine. Go for that. That has been shown to win and be successful with the Rays, with the Orioles, for example, of last year. But when you look at what the Tigers can do, there's no reason that they have to be the Rays. They would be actually foolish to be the Rays, in my opinion.
So I do have one final question kind of before we shift into the next series, and this brings it back to the Guardians a bit and kind of looking forward in the postseason. Is so one thing that you kind of could see today was that, as again, throughout the series, both teams used a lot of relief pitchers a lot of the time. They were big on pulling starters early sometimes, or having, in a sense, opener games. But there were some signs potentially in this game that either one, relief pitchers were starting to tire a bit because they were walking a lot of guys, or they were inconsistent with their control, or that even potentially the other team may have been exposed to them a little too much. And now hitters were starting to time up and figure out kind of how other teams' pitchers worked. So for the Guardians moving forward as they face the Yankees in the championship series, do you think this will be something that they need to maybe rethink a little bit, how Vogt uses the bullpen, given now it's a 7-game series versus a 5-game series? Or do you think that the Guardians bullpen is strong enough that even with some exposure to some heavy hitters on the Yankees, they should be, that is their best move going forward?
Look, right now on the Yankees, and I'll start by transitioning here. The Yankees have a hot bat in Stanton, and you have two monsters at the plate in Judge and Soto. As long as you don't let them beat you, there's no reason why you can't win this series. I'm not going to predict a sweep here by the Guardians, but I think the Guardians do win this because not just because of, their bullpen, but because of their consistency, both at the plate and also, their bullpen. If I'm not incorrect here, didn't they have the best bullpen in baseball
The
this
Guardians
year?
did this year, yes.
So there's no reason why they can't shut down this lineup of Joe Schmoes in the Yankees. I mean, outside of Judge and Soto and Stanton, who do they have? Nobody. Everybody else has had their slumps and has been bad. And the old expression is good pitching beats good hitting any day of the week. So I mean, we're gonna see definitely, but you got to look at it like that. And honestly, if I was the Yankees, I didn't want the Guardians. I wanted the Tigers because the Guardians definitely match up better against this Yankees lineup. And their
Mhm.
pitching, in terms of the Yankees, is not good. It is not good.
So I'm gonna slightly recant on what you're saying about the Yankees pitching. There were definitely some question marks in the rotation in the postseason first round for them in the division series. But the one thing that was really impressive from the Yankees is their bullpen did not allow an earned run the entire series. They allowed one run, and it was unearned in game one from Tim Hill. So, if anything for the Yankees, and something that I had kind of pointed out ahead of our postseason predictions, was that the recent trend for whoever the World Series winner is a team that has finished the season within the top three in their specific league in runs scored. And then in the postseason, whether or not they already had great pitching going into it, that's what stepped up over a poor offense stepping up to be good along with good pitching. So the Yankees right now, to me, while sure, you were facing a Royals team, had a magical season, was on a nice run. They made the postseason. They entered the postseason limping offensively, made it past the wild card series, but their offense was still a little inconsistent outside of the first couple games in the division series, and ultimately they did absolutely nothing in Kansas City. The Yankees, to me, are at least following that paradigm potentially, where yes, I agree with what you said. Their offense is very much a bunch of mediocre performing players right now. Judge was absolutely the MVP from last series, hitting 375, and Judge is continuing to show poor performances in the postseason despite his outstanding regular season numbers. Though in his career, he does have a 440 slugging percentage to go with a 220 batting average. So the biggest answer probably for the Yankees is to have the offense or have your big gun like Judge step up a little bit than just being a 200 or sub 200 hitter. But I will say the Yankees pitching is in a much better situation than I thought it would be entering the postseason. And as we saw, at least at times, I will say, not always, but times in this past series for the Guardians, good pitching could hold them to 3 or less runs a game. And I don't think it's unheard of for a Yankees team to look to score 5 runs a game.
Now, I want to caveat your caveat with saying that the Royals also were one of, coming down the stretch, a very poor hitting team. It, I mean, and that's coming from me as an Orioles fan. The Royals scored 3 runs in the wild card series to beat the Orioles. That isn't gonna fly. And then, when it comes down to it, you had the Yankees bullpen, they just held up and they competed against this poor offensive team. So I think, in a sense, it's almost this is a real test for that bullpen, not the Royals in that sense. I think that's a series they should have won. There's no reason they
I agree
shouldn't
with
have.
that. I thought it was going to be a sweep and it only took one extra game. So I did think that they had a very good advantage entering that one. Um, all right, so let's go off of saying that the bullpen does at least come back to earth a little bit in the next series. How important is it for the Yankees to have Judge right the ship, or are they fine if Judge can kind of just do what postseason Judge has done, but you have like Stanton kind of return to a little bit of his previous form? He does have good career postseason numbers with a 643 slugging percentage. You have Juan Soto, who can be a table maker, and Judge will still walk even if he does not hit for average. So there's at least that. Or is basically the Yankees, as we've said year after year, still built on their success based on the success of Aaron Judge?
I mean, it's the second one, 100%. There's a reason he's the captain of that team. So you got to look at it like that.
Well, he's not leading by example, so way to go, captain, in the postseason.
I mean, I'm not saying he's, leading by example. I'm just saying there's a reason he's the captain. You got to look at it like that. So is Judge important? Of course, Judge is important. Judge is probably the most important member of that Yankees team. But having Soto and having Stanton actually, doing his job for once, is also important. So, even if that slack is picked up by Stanton and by Soto, you still need your main chess piece there to produce. You
Hmm.
can't go into this with one arm tied behind your back, essentially.
Hmm. Yeah. So I'm going to steer this now a little to the Royals side. I know we're going to give tons of love for the Yankees when we have to do our predictions for the championship series, but I do want to kind of bring into focus the Royals season a little bit because they've absolutely blew all expectations out of the water, especially my own, which I thought they would have a significant jump, but to jump nearly 20 games and make the postseason is otherworldly. So, John, putting aside the offensive struggles the Royals had this postseason in the last month or so, overall, you have to say this 2024 season has been super exciting for Royals fans, and they have a bright future in this bright future in store for them.
Yeah, good for you. You were playing with house money. I still don't like you. But either way, good for you, Royals. You know, you were playing with house money. You had nothing to lose. You could only go up from losing what, 60 game or from only winning what, 60 games the year before, something like
It was
that.
pretty bad. I mean, I don't have the
Yeah.
exact number in front of me, but it wasn't pretty.
Yeah. So when you look at it like that, yeah, this is exciting. That's a franchise that, unlike the Tigers, I think this was a fluke. I think they really didn't back into this.
No,
That's
they
more so
they
what
were
the Braves
dominant for a
did.
lot of the season.
Yeah, I would say that what they did was they took advantage of their veteran experience of the bats that they signed in the offseason, and also rode the tail of their superstar
Now
playmaker and
that part I would agree
Bobby
with.
Witt Jr. So when you can do that and have success, it's exactly what the Yankees want to do with Judge. It's what they do with Judge. That's what everybody wants to do in Major League Baseball. So, good for you. You did what you should do. But when it comes down to it, you know should not have gone as far as you did. I am still very bitter. And
Oh, really? I can't tell.
I still don't like you, and honestly, I'm happy that you lost. I was hoping neither of you would win, but somebody had to win.
Yeah, you were hoping that the stadium would collapse and the Tigers and Guardians matchup would have been a championship series matchup
Yeah.
instead.
Best of 15. Here we go.
Holy cow. No. We already don't like the fact that it goes in November a little bit. This will go you'll go into Thanksgiving if the games go to best of 15.
No, best of 15. You got to do the division series, and then somebody gets the home field advantage in the championship series. So that's what you're playing
Yeah, that's
for.
still best of 12. That's not 15.
Whatever. No, you
You're
can't do
adding the
12.
wild card series
You
on
can't
top
do
of it.
no, you can't do 12 because it has to be an odd number. So let's
All right,
just
so you're adding
say
the wild card series on
be,
top of
be,
it that they've already played. So now it's wild card series pool B.
no, I'll take away that. So best of 11. There you go. 7
Good.
11.
Well, yeah, they're totally still successful. I think I just read they're closing like 400 stores. But
Hey, listen, a good Slurpee, that's what you need in the summer sometimes.
I'm not a Slurpee person.
What?
Anywho, that's a whole other thing we don't have time for.
That's
But
an off-season talk.
you did kind of answer my second question, and I will admit I'm a little bit on your side, even with my personal praise of the Royals. Is they weren't quite a team of two halves. They were 9 games over 500 before the All-Star break and 3 games over 500 in the second half. I think overall they probably, when looking into next year, unless they have um a significant signing or two, are probably a little closer to that second half team. I Bobby Witt absolutely went a whole other level and beyond this year, and he is definitely going to carry the team. But I do think he, quote unquote, did carry the team. There's not too much if you look at that lineup from an offensive standpoint that stands out outside of him and Salvador Perez, who is absolutely getting up there in age, though he still seems to have some power. And
Yeah,
Pasquantino, who
I don't
was
know
injured
how.
for
I didn't
near
I
the end of the season.
forgot that I forgot he was on that World Series team. Honestly,
I want to see him
that's.
and Giancarlo Stanton have a foot race.
I mean, listen, we know that Stanton has a speed of 0,
No,
so
I'm giving it to Stanton because here's the thing: you put it in a race, you put some money on the line. What I've heard is that Stanton really can run faster. He's just told not to, so he doesn't blow something out again. So
well
I want
that
him to be like, oh look, he's a zero, and you go to do a race and he just speeds by
that,
him.
and you also have to take into account, is Salvador Perez DHing that day, or is he behind the plate? So
I don't think it matters. I think he's still as slow as ever. But the other thing with the pitching with the Royals is the fact that their pitching staff was really, really effective this year in the rotation. And that's going to stay. There's really nothing to expect there that's going to get any different. However, there were some concerns with the bullpen. There was like a tale of two halves for that bullpen. You had your back end guys that you were fairly confident with, and it felt okay. And then if you were somewhat out of the game, it felt like you might as well have a blowout. Because some of these guys you'd have like it felt like you'd fall apart late in the game. I
they need
thought
to
the
improve that.
bullpen, yeah,
If
no,
they
absolutely. If they need to probably add um a better back bullpen guy to help there. They need to add more to the offense, build around Bobby Witt and what they're building up there youth wise. Since they made the postseason this year, and they made the postseason with a lot of ups and downs late in the season, they have kind of an indication of what they need to do, or where some holes are they could fill out. And since they are a young group, that would be appealing to any free agents that are looking to sign a somewhat longer term deal. So I don't think
hey
they're going to
Kansas
be in on
City,
any of the biggest names, but
hey
I
Kansas
mean,
City, I know someone who's available. He goes like this, and his name starts with a C. Good old
good
Red
old
Wing.
choke,
Yeah,
good old
Ch-
choke,
good old
choke
Craig
Kimbrell.
Kimbrell. I hear he's available. He's taking calls.
He's taking calls, but that doesn't mean he's getting anything. I mean, I hear the Orioles will need him back because who
No,
knows why.
no, 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 no. We
He
went
wants
down
to
that
prove that
road.
he can still somewhat pitch. I didn't say effectively, but he can pitch.
Yeah, and I want to prove that I'm going to be a millionaire one day. That doesn't mean it might happen. I'm just
All right, well, look
saying.
at your savings account.
Well,
All right,
so.
so do you have anything else you want to say pertaining to either series? Don't go too much in predictions. We'll come back to that later.
Oh,
Uh,
okay, good.
before we move to the National League.
Tigers, congratulations. Royals, go yourself.
Go touch some grass, get home.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to the National League. And all I got to say is, who's your daddy now, Padres? Because the Dodgers are the ones that won the series, even though you were up 2-1 at home, and your
Yeah.
offense, which had been very effective this entire postseason, went to sleep. And they went to sleep against the part of the Dodgers pitching rotation that we were concerned about. They made it through the actual starters that were available in the postseason. They could not make it work versus the bullpen game, and then facing Yamamoto a second time, they were just not there. Now, maybe the Dodgers fans were a little, we pissed them off last time. We got under their skin, and now we have a little bit of a chip on our shoulders. But yes, the Dodgers pitching out of anything is held the Padres in check for no runs in the last 2 games, and now the Dodgers are going back to the NLCS for the first time in 3 years, which I know 3 years is not a lot. But when you're a Dodgers team and the Dodgers team keeps failing the way it has been, 3 years kind of does seem like a lot. So now, John, did we underestimate potentially with the Dodgers pitching situation enter the postseason, or did the Padres just outplay themselves and try to do too much at the end?
I don't think they tried to do too much, but I think they did outplay. I think they were hitting well above their weight class. But honestly,
they're a pretty good
we're
offensive
not.
team, though, that
We
Padres.
should. Yes, they should. They are. However, to be in the situation that they were in, where they could have won the division had things gone a certain way, is ridiculous. The Dodgers, congratulations. You did what you were supposed to do. You don't deserve to even celebrate here. You didn't
Oh my
win
God.
shit. You didn't win shit. All right. You did what you're supposed to do. You had the $1 billion man on your team. You have
700 million, but who's counting?
whatever. You have this video game team put together. You have this, young gun in Yamamoto. Good job. You did what you should do. Now actually go do something with it and make it to the World Series. Because right now, I'm not predicting that you're gonna win this.
I mean, their bullpen is really effective, though. You have to at least accept that fact right now is Yamamoto did better. He probably will not pitch until I guess maybe the third game of the Mets Dodgers series, maybe the second game. I'm trying to do the thinking in my head as if that's a 1 day short rest or
Well,
not. But
when is
they
the
start tomorrow, or they start Sunday. Um,
okay?
and then the
So
next
well, he
game, as
essentially
far as
has
I
two
know, would
days
be Monday.
rest. He essentially has 2 days rest already. Uh,
Well, not
so
already.
or
This would
not
be the
2 days.
first day of
Yeah,
rest.
this would be the
Yeah, he's
first
not
day.
going to pitch until game 3.
Yeah,
So unless they choose to really push him, but so that's going to be one thing that could work against the Dodgers there. But if the bullpen, if Dave Roberts can do the one thing he does not seem to get a hold of any other postseason and actually use the bullpen at the right moments and not like pull the plug too early, yes, the Dodgers could surprise. I mean, you have Ohtani. Ohtani, he had the home run in the first game. He honestly, but he did not stand out. He performed much similar to what Judge did, but you had people step up. From Mookie Betts got on base a lot. Teoscar Hernandez was arguably the real team MVP. Um, so the Dodgers offense is still very much a threat. And one thing that I will say does help Ohtani's case is that the Mets don't have lefties really in their bullpen. They have 2 lefties in the rotation. They have David Peterson. That might be it. So
hmm
the Padres were very effective against Ohtani because they threw Tanner Scott like every chance they could,
hmm
or a lefty of some form. And they got Shohei out a lot because of that. The Mets don't have that. So, and the Mets bullpen has had some times where it was a little shaky. So, Ohtani could very much pounce on that. But I want to steer it back to the Padres for a minute because we'll gripe about the Dodgers and what they have coming for them potentially in a minute. Do you think the injury to Joe Musgrove potentially hurt the Padres more than we realize? I mean, we knew it was going to be a factor, but I think we all were in kind of agreement that yes, it might send it to a game 5 as it did versus a game 4, but we still felt confident that the Padres would come out on top. But what the Padres ended up doing was Dylan Cease pitched game 1 and then he pitched game 4 on 1 day short rest. He did not pitch well either game.
yeah,
He gave up 5 runs in the game 1 in under 4 innings, and he gave up 3 runs in less than 2 innings in game 4, which eventually turned into an 8-0 blowout for the Dodgers. And then you had Darvish pitch on 2 games, but Darvish, on that other hand, did pitch well both times. It's just the offense didn't show up in game 5. So do you think that the Musgrove injury did kind of throw a curveball for the Padres where they might have been able to pull it out otherwise?
yeah. I think so. I think it really affected things, whether they will admit it or not. But because I mean, it changes your mindset going into that series against the Dodgers. You know what I mean? So
I
you
don't know. I felt
really
like they were fairly confident in themselves early on. I mean,
they were confident in themselves, but yeah, but it still changes your strategy as a manager.
well, sure,
You're
yeah,
looking
he
at
changed.
matchups.
Yeah.
So it to say that it didn't affect anything would be just be foolish
I
and
guess the thing is to
irresponsible
say
to say.
is, do you think they potentially lost the reason for that case? Do you think, because I can understand, I should say, I know that the offense did not show up the last couple of games,
I was
but
about
I
to
am
say,
also a believer that when a team gets blown out fairly early in a game, the offense has a tendency to pull back extremely and kind of shut down for that game. And in the game 4, the Dodgers did a lot of run scoring within the first like 3 innings. They basically scored everything. So if you're the Padres offense, I could see them pulling off the gas a little bit there just because of that. Whereas, let's say you had Joe Musgrove pitching game 4 and Musgrove kept them in the game longer and maybe the offense didn't cool off. Do you think that it? So, my point is just more of on that sense, do you think it was enough to change it? Or do you think no, the offense it's hard to really say that would have impacted the offense enough, or that there were lots of other mistakes that I'm apparently not aware of, because I thought the Padres in general until the very end played it as well as they could have.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say how much one player would have affected a blowout like that, but look, it's the old adage: if you don't score a run, you don't deserve to win. So you kind of can't
He's
blame
telling that to you, Manny Machado. I know this.
you can't blame the pitching for you not being able to cross the plate. So you got to look at it like that. But I still think that it affected things, at least from a strategy standpoint. I mean, I think they would have been riding their swagger all the way to the World Series if they would have, really would have gone that far. Would have. I don't think they would have put so much emphasis, or I don't think it would have affected them as much
Yeah.
if that didn't happen. But now that it did happen, you're kind of left guessing what to do in game 4. We saw what happened, and then game 5, you're trying to put this veteran out there that against, like I said, this young gunslinger of
Mhm.
Yamamoto. So you gotta put your best hand out there game 5. But if you don't score a run, especially when it was 2-0, game 5, there's no reason. You know,
Yamamoto was just really on point that game.
I mean, it held them to 2 runs though. He did his job. You didn't do yours.
Well, you're talking about Darvish now. I was talking
Yes.
about the Yamamoto held the Padres in check. Two
Well,
hits.
yes, there's that aspect, but I'm talking about Darvish. Darvish did his job
Yeah, he
clearly.
absolutely did his job, but
So
Yamamoto did really well too.
th-
Even better.
I mean,
He was actually pulled a little early, even too. I think wasn't he pulled in like after like 66 pitches
I think that could have been just to save his arm for the
workload.
yeah, try to
Anyway,
space it out a little bit.
you gotta win. It worked out for Dave Roberts, but that's the type of move that Roberts would do, and it would absolutely backfire on him. So we'll see what happens versus the Mets. But for the one last thing for the Padres is they entered the season with kind of an outside chance, or were basically a team fighting for that third wild card spot. Do you consider this sixth season a success because they made the postseason, even though they lost in the division series to the Dodgers? Or do you consider it, I don't want to say a bust, but a failure, given how effective the team was in the second half? And a lot of people were thinking that this Padres team could have been a dark horse team and even be the NL representative in the World Series behind the Dodgers and the Phillies.
That's a problem when it comes to teams that are really good. It becomes World Series or bust, championship or bust, championship series or bust. When in reality, it's hard in baseball to even get this far. I mean, we saw how many good teams get bounced in this series, in these games, in this round, and then we saw how many good teams get bounced in the wild card. We saw how many teams didn't even make the playoffs, period, such as like the Mariners, the Twins, who were in it all the way to the end. So, that's something that
They
I
shot themselves in
kind
the
of,
foot.
yes, but still. Anyway, point is, I kind of hate that personally, because to win a World Series is incredibly difficult.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the Dodgers they're playing a different ball game by having a video game team. So they're
They're
almost
playing with
held
stupid
to,
money.
they really are. So they're almost setting themselves up for be held at a different standard than everyone else. And now you have, you know, but then you have the rest of baseball where it's like, is it really a failure when you make the postseason? I was thinking about this yesterday, not to go on a tangent here, but I was thinking about this yesterday. Is it almost more of an accomplishment to even make the playoffs, period, than it is to necessarily win the World Series when that's so difficult to do? Like, is that still an accomplishment making the playoffs? Is what I'm basically trying to ask.
To me, it is still an accomplishment making the playoffs to an extent. I think a lot of it is context. Whereas, like, if you take the Phillies, the Dodgers, Yankees, even Orioles, I would say at this point, given the way their new team is looking, um, they're teams that you expect to make the postseason because they have a really deep team that you can lose a guy or two or have a couple people not performing well and they'll make the playoffs, especially given the current format with 6 representatives from each league. However, when you have a team like the Tigers or the Mets, and even you could argue the Braves, given how many injuries they had this season, slip into the postseason, then I consider you could say that's more of an achievement at the naked eye. You can also take how the team celebrates at the end of the season because they're the teams that have done this a few times, and their celebrations when they make the postseason are very much tamed down. But then as they advance in the postseason, the celebrations get bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, well, your thing was that, but didn't you say also something about is that more impressive was it than a World Series? You said. And
maybe that was the poor way of phrasing it, but is it almost for in terms of more teams? Is it obviously winning a World Series? Does that make winning a World Series more impressive in that sense because it is so difficult to even make the postseason?
I mean, you could argue nowadays that because there's so many teams in the postseason, winning the World Series is a bit more impressive. Because if you're a lower seeded team like the Rangers were last year, and you have to go through every single round and win 13 games over a span of 4 series to win a World Series, then yes, that's quite a month of baseball you're playing basically right there. Whereas, and even if you're a seeded team or a top seeded team, you have the bye. There are thoughts about that. We'll go into a little later, kind of whether that's still true or not. But that you would have 5 days off to then kind of try to build your team, and then you're playing the same dance that you've always played before. However, you're facing now hot teams that have a little bit of momentum, and then you have to try to make sure that you can keep your offense fresh. So I would say that at the moment, if you ask the majority, it's still probably, I wouldn't say people would claim it as more impressive, but I think as we give it a few extra years and we start seeing what seeded teams win the World Series, or at least how many more number 6 seeds, number 5 seeds get farther into the postseason, then I think people are going to realize that it is a whole lot harder than people are giving credit for to win a World Series than it used to be circa not even like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So moving that now to the last wild card or last National League game.
I'm just going to back off here and I'm going to let you go on this one.
I'm going to start with the Mets too. I'm going to save my Phillies bit for later.
Oh boy.
But I just hate that Tyler's not here right now because now I have to say compliments about the Mets.
Oh, I can say compliments about the Mets for you.
No. I said I would take his spot. I will do it.
All right.
The OMG Grimace Mets, because that's what I'm now calling them, given their, all the luck. Like they're doing everything. They're bleeding purple over there. Their run continues as they dominated the Phillies, and I mean dominated the Phillies and the NLDS, taking the series in 4, and they got really darn close to making it a sweep. They outscored the Phillies 23-12. The Mets have the best record in baseball since the middle of May. So we're not even talking now the second half. Practically 3/4 of the season, the Mets have the best record. Are they still the underdog moving forward, John?
Yeah, 100%. You have to play the video game team. Yeah,
they have to play the video game team that I know what we just said about the pitching. They're still slightly down pitching staff wise, and now their best performing starter in the division series will probably not be pitching until game 3 unless he's on really shortened rest for game 2. And you're having you are having a Mets team that has not played a game in like 4 days because of when they clinched. So they're going to have time
about that
against them potentially. However, you figure they have a hangover day where they celebrate and need to recoup, and then they have 3 days of just getting back
practice.
into the grind, and then they're playing their series again. So right now they basically had a mini base all-star break per se, and now they have everything lined up the way they want to have it lined up.
Well, I thought about that. They've been riding this almost. They almost got the ground running, hit the ground running in the postseason because they played essentially a play-in game of that doubleheader, two play-in games. So you gotta. If you look at it like that, maybe this might be the worst thing that happened to them, clinching so early, in that sense of so early in the week. Whereas the games start what tomorrow as
The
far
game
as the
starts tomorrow.
NLCS.
Yes.
So you got to look at it. So if you look at it like that, I think tomorrow will be the real test of what is this break do to them versus the Dodgers, who I mean, they've they won yesterday, they won last night. They had a day off.
Yep.
And they had that rest going into the division series, so they're used to competing off of a break essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Mets aren't used to that now. So it's going to be a real test for them to have this little mini break in that sense. And I think just mentally, it will be a factor.
Mm-hmm. I do think it will have maybe some effect on the bullpen because the bullpen is the thing I have some question marks on. But this offense is so freaking hot and resilient right now that I feel like they're on cloud nine right now. They need to like lose a couple games and get knocked down a peg before they suddenly are like, all right, all right, all right, we're coming back to earth. We got to focus a little better. I mean,
Oof, I
Mark
disagree with you.
Vientos of all people is like an absolute beast right now in the postseason. He hit 563 in the NLDS. Like, holy God. Like, it was
Yeah.
impossible to try to get him out, especially if there's a left-hander in there.
Yeah.
Good thing, unless my brain is wrong, that the Dodgers don't have a left-handed starting pitcher right now because they can just throw all the righties they want in the world at him. Um, if the Mets are smart, they will arrange their rotation too and start with Minaya and Quintana because then they can throw lefties back to back against
Yeah.
Shohei and try to and therefore have them
Try
be
to bury him 2-0.
right. Bury them early, and then if the game series goes past 4 games, and it most likely will, they'll pitch 5 and 6 potentially. So you need to get as basically knock Shohei back to have a
Yeah.
shot versus this Dodgers team. But the Mets right now, they just look like they are very, very in sync offensively. And while the bullpen did take a step forward last series for the whole postseason at the moment, they still have an ERA slightly over 4. And Edwin Diaz did not know what the strike zone looked like in that last game before clinching. It took like 3 batters and like a smack to the face to be like, oh, wait, yeah, we haven't won yet, even though we're up by 3.
Yeah.
So, and he did blow the save in game 2 when the Phillies did win. So the Mets, I still feel like, are very much um underappreciated still, if that's even possible, though the fact that they've made it this far, I think, says wonders to how hot they truly are, and people are realizing that. But the fact now that the Dodgers are the team that they're facing, the team with the best record in baseball this season, that's going to be what kind of overshadows kind of the Mets right now is, oh, look, the Shohei Ohtani Dodgers have made it to the championship series and they're one step to making it to the World Series. So this is going to be a very interesting series because I can see the Dodgers taking early leads and the Mets fighting back. And it could be a very back and forth matchup every game. And the fact that it is 7 games is probably great news for the Mets because if they can see the pitching a little longer, they're probably going to get synced up to it.
It definitely gives you time to definitely make those adjustments. That whereas a 5 game, a 3 game series, you have to get it right the first time because you don't know how many more at bats you're going to get in that sense. So or I should say, you have a lot less at bats. You obviously know how many at bats you're going to get, but that's not the point. The point of the matter is that I think it really does help the Mets in that sense of being able to fight back against the Dodgers and taking it the distance. I think that if they're going to win, they need to take this to at least a game 6, if not a game 7. Now, you said at the start of this or at the start of that, where that you thought that it was the bats that could really benefit from these days off. I disagree with you. If you're hitting, you want to do nothing else but hit. You want to keep that momentum going. But the bullpen and their arms, in as far as their pitching rotation, they're probably like, oh, thank God we had a few days off. My arm's about to fall off.
As a Phillies fan, I don't know if that's true.
I mean, look, let's put it this way. That I think that those days off will benefit their arms. However, I think that game 1 will be a real telltale sign whether or not this rest that they've had of these 4 days is going to affect them or not. Because, like I said, they hit the ground running into the postseason, and you don't want to stop. This is like when you're driving down the freeway going, 65. Drive at a reasonable speed, kids. Keep up the flow of traffic, but don't speed. When you're driving at a reasonable speed and then it just comes to a screeching halt, and now you're going 20. That's essentially what has happened. So we're going to see if they ran out of gas.
All right. I'm now steering it to the Phillies.
Floor is yours, my friend. Floor is yours. Get it off your chest. Say it. Say it with your chest.
As a diehard Phillies fan, having watched them my entire life, I can honestly say this was the most embarrassing performance I have ever seen the Phillies have in a postseason, and that includes being swept by the Rockies in 2007 in the NLDS.
Oofa.
They basically had 3 starting pitchers and 2 hitters show up. That's it.
Ouch.
Zach Wheeler, Christopher Sanchez, Ranger Suarez, Bryce Harper, and Nick Castellanos. Harper and Castellanos combined hit .379 with 2 home runs and 6 RBIs. The rest of the team, 130 with 1 home run and 5 RBIs, and that home run was Schwarber's home run he hit in the first at bat of the first game. Schwarber had 2 hits
of the first inning.
Of the bottom of the first inning. Schwarber had 2 hits in his first 2 at-bats of the postseason and then went 0 for 14. Turner hit 200. Marsh and Bohm each hit .077, and Bohm needs to get whatever's going on in his head figured out, because this was something we thought Bohm got over with like a year ago, and for the last month and a half, 2 months, he's been wearing his emotions on his sleeve to an extreme amount. He'll pop up in the first inning, he'll act like he just lost the World Series. It's insane.
How do you feel about Austin Hayes now?
What?
How do you feel about Austin Hayes now?
He didn't hurt or help the team. He was just there. We got him with the sake of
he was a warm body.
We got him for the sake of he could hit lefties better than Marsh was hitting lefties, or that he could hit slightly better than Rojas did. Did he? If you probably broke it down, yes. Did he do enough to make it worthwhile? Probably not. Anyway, the bullpen, though, for the Phillies had an ERA of 6.37.
Oof.
Yeah, I'm surprised it wasn't worse, but I guess they got better over time, because all it took for us to lose game 4 was 1 grand slam instead of blowing a save after blowing a save after blowing a save. The back end pitchers were just really bad this entire series, with allowing inherited runners or just runners, period. And that was the hot spot for the Mets, is they would stay in games and beat up weak spots in the bullpen late. Clearly, the Phillies bullpen was not prepared for this series. Didn't believe it coming in anyway, but you can't say that it's because of the buys, or if you say it's because of the buys, then it's because the Phillies did it wrong, because the other 3 top seeded teams won their games. So it is not a matter of, the Phillies shouldn't have the buy. Well, then how did these other teams do it? The main thing you could look at coming in is, while a lot of people favored the Phillies and many expected it to go the full route this series, As I said before, the Mets have the best record in baseball since the middle of May, and since the All-Star break, they were 40-27. The Phillies, since the All-Star break, were a 500 team, and if you look over the last couple weeks of September, their offense really had teetered off a lot. Was that partially because they had clinched a postseason spot by like the 14th, 15th of September? And then it was only a matter of days for them to win the division. So, and it could happen with just other teams losing it. They did not need to win. Sure, but it was an absolute embarrassment to watch this team perform, to watch them chase so many pitches, talk about, yeah, we know we got to be more patient. Well, you didn't freaking show it. So it's like, how can I even believe what's going to happen moving forward with this squad? Because you're a bunch of veterans that seem locked in your old ways. You just talk the talk. You don't actually show what you're doing. And I knew immediately in the postseason there was some concern for the Phillies, because what made them so effective last year offensively was that they were taking a lot of pitches early. They were having the pitchers rack up high pitch counts. They may not score a lot in the first 3 innings, but then they could pounce on a guy later on as he gets up there and pitches. And so the Phillies team looked very patient and disciplined to finding their pitch and hitting it. This year's team looked like, hey, everyone in the goddamn stadium knows how they're going to pitch you, but I'm going to swing if it looks good. So that's about all I have to say. So my main thing, I guess, for you, John, is what do you think was the reason for the collapse?
I don't have anything to add, man. You just said it all. I have a better question for you.
Go.
We know how short, like, and reactionary Philly can be in all of their sports. Does this affect Thompson as your manager going forward? You had all the chips, but you had all the chips. You were the house in this. Red October, yada yada yada. What do you think?
We'll kind of go back and forth here, because the last question I had was simply going to be about do you think, or at least if you could think of a bold thing you think the Phillies will do this offseason. It doesn't have to go super extensive, but the main conversation that has come out of this series is that there's going to be changes with the team going into next year. What exactly they are, that's where a lot of speculation will come in, because the Phillies entered this season with practically the exact same squad they had last year, which was one win away from making the World Series for the second year in a row. And they really should have. But now that they made it they won the division, and it looked like it was a really good move to make because of just the camaraderie and the strong core it seemed like they had in the clubhouse. And the fact that they fizzled out immediately in the postseason, there's going to be major changes. That being said, Thompson will stay in 2025. He has one more year left of an extension he got. I think it was last year. For the extension was for this year in 2025. He will stay. I am not surprised if one major coach gets released, though. I don't know for sure. My hunch would be, if they released one of the main coaches, it would be Kevin Long, because Kevin Long has been with the team for the last few years, but last year was at the helm when the team had the struggles in the postseason it had, and has taken the team through the same obstacles, rickets, everything again, and had the exact same result. So you start to have questions then about the offensive approach. And that's the other thing about the Phillies is the big changes they're going to do going into next year are going to be geared heavily around chasing pitches. The outfield is probably going to get an overhaul. Does that mean all three positions will change? Probably not. I could see as many as two, though, if the Phillies really wanted to get bold. I think it'll just probably be one in the end. There's some questions about whether the Phillies would try to trade Castellanos, who they still have 2 years of control under at $20 million a year. He's good offensively. You can ask a lot of people their opinions on his defense, because the metrics say that he's not a good defender, but he does not make errors. So he just doesn't have the range Right.
Yeah.
That's the whole metrics thing there. But you have Rojas, who did not take the step forward that they wanted him to this year. They have Marsh, who is good versus right-handers. He is not good versus left-handers, and he has a huge swing that does not look like it's going to change unless he can flat out bring his hands down before he does his swing, because he does this big like a loop with his hands before he swings, and that just seems to make fastballs impossible for him to hit, especially high fastballs. The Phillies could trade them. The Phillies could just try to do a massive platoon situation. Will they be in on Juan Soto? That's a discussion for another time. Does he fit the MO of what they would want? Absolutely. Do they have a good marketing team? Yes, because they have Kevin Long, Trey Turner, and Bryce Harper at the moment. But I don't think it will probably happen. However, we have Dave Dombrowski as the president of baseball ops. He will do crazy things that are great for the moment, and then big contracts that'll kind of weigh on you way down the line. But
I was about to say, can you afford that when it comes to
from
if you had Harper
over,
and Soto?
Can we afford it? Middleton would probably pay for it. Would it put us over the luxury tax for probably the next decade? Yes. So the Phillies are just they're gonna try and pounce on these next 3 years that they have Wheeler for before his contract's up, and it's expected that Wheeler would retire after those 3 years. He has kind of come out and said that he doesn't care if he's declining. He just kind of wants to have a lot of time left to see his kids grow up and be there for his family. A lot of respect there. So the Phillies have now a 3-year window remaining on what is probably going to be their best chance to win a World Series. They're going to do everything they can to make it happen, but there's going to be some major changes because this same core thing did not work out. And there's now a bunch of people that are on, hey, if you can't perform this year, they may trade you the next year. Any piece you want to say on the Phillies before we go into our final NLCS predictions, Jonathan?
No, I think the horse is dead, and I think you just beat it to death. I think you just shot it.
I'm not going to continue to beat,
but I can. I'm not going to beat the dead horse. I think you killed it. It's all right. Look, when it comes to the Phillies, this is a huge disappointment, and that's all I got to say about that.
All right. So, last thing. Championship series starts tomorrow. We have the Dodgers facing the Mets, and in the American League, we have the Guardians versus the Yankees. Only person that even has a World Series contender in their bracket still alive is Tyler with the Guardians, who we had making the World Series but losing.
Whoa. I had the Guardians in the ALCS.
Thank you. But you had the Orioles in the World Series, so you don't count.
Oh, well. Also, that's not
everyone's bracket's busted. We are great at obviously making predictions for the postseason because we clearly have read MLB's script. So now, John, starting with the NLCS, because that game is tomorrow, who do you think wins the series?
I really think this time off is going to cool off the Mets, and they're going to have a rude awakening. I'm going to go Dodgers in 6.
I am saying this because I'm not going to bet against trends until they prove not to be true. And I'm also going to do this because every time I want to root for someone this postseason or I make a prediction in favor of someone, they lose. So I'm having the Mets win in 6. There's no reason to bet against the Mets right now.
I was about to say, do you want the Mets to win?
God, no.
Okay.
But I'm making this based on what I think, not what I want.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, I just think the Dodgers, that video game team is going to be, it's going to be ridiculous. I think, yeah.
To me, it's the Mets offense. You just cannot bet against the Mets offense at any point anymore. And any potential teetering the bullpen or pitching might have is not enough. Are the Dodgers a team that have enough star power to break that dam? Yes, but hey, I'm done picking against the number 6 seed in the National League. That is a sacred spot that is clearly going to whoever gets it. For the Mets, it's you, and the Dodgers, you have the best record in baseball. Doesn't usually end well for you in the postseason. So I'm sticking with that as much as I hate saying it.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing is that I thought the Dodgers would blow this like they normally do. They didn't. I thought that excuse me, the I thought the Padres were gonna ride this, heater all the way to you know, to the World Series. They did not. It's difficult to really say, you know, to say one way or the other. As far as winning the World Series, the Dodgers are currently plus 160. The Mets are currently uh, plus 420. If that makes
That's a good number. That's a good number.
that is a good number.
That is a good number. Why did they have to give them that number?
Because you have to be high if you think that if
So they're
you
going to be
thought
the
that
lit
the Mets would be it.
OMG Grimace Mets. Got
They,
it. Wow.
I
Thank you,
mean,
Vegas.
listen, Vegas might know what they're talking about here. So
And that's
definitely,
why the A's are going to Vegas.
I mean, it's not a surprise. The Dodgers are favored, but it's kind of a surprise. It's honestly more of a surprise they got out of the divisional round. So
Yeah, they made it a step. So, all right, American League now. Tell me what you really feel, John. Who's winning in the American League?
I gotta go with consistency here, and I'm gonna go with the Guardians. I don't think the Yankees. I think they're gonna, you know, struggle here against this bullpen, and I think that we're going to their warts are really gonna show. So I'm gonna go with Guardians in. I'm gonna say Guardians in 5. Gentlemen sweep.
See, what's hard for me to choose here is, especially if I want to stick with the trends, like I had said, is it's hard for me to pick against the Yankees based on the research I did before about recent trends, how the Yankees bullpen did really well, though I do understand what you were saying about it being against a Royals team that was struggling. And I do like the Guardians. The Guardians were a team for a lot of the season I was considering as a World Series team, but I backed off at the last second given matchups and trends and just decided to go
And
towards different metrics.
The fact they ran into the hot Tigers.
Originally, I had them beating the Tigers. So my bracket had the Guardians in the championship series. After the Tigers beat the Astros, I changed my mind and thought the Tigers would win in 5. But no, I'm like you. My bracket in that sense is still correct with the Guardians in the championship series, but I have the Orioles in the World Series like a moron. But
yeah, well, I had the Phillies in the World Series like a moron. So here we are.
I had the Phillies winning. I'm dumber than you.
I had the Orioles winning. I'm just as dumb.
Look what we did to ourselves. But we scored more runs than you, so I can say that at least.
You also played more games.
We scored more runs than you did in like one game than you did in the entire series.
Yeah, whatever.
Like any one game, except for the last game. We only scored 1 run in the last game. We scored at least 2 in all the others.
Yeah, whatever.
But I want the Guardians too, because I like the Guardians kind of situation and its story a little more than the Yankees right now. So I'm going to go with the Guardians. I'm going to go with the Guardians in 7, though, because I do think the Yankees early on will try to give them a run for their money, but then the Guardians pitching will hold them in check. So therefore, I'm going against what I said about recent trends, and the World Series is going to be a Guardians-Mets matchup, and that just feels like a weird combination to get at the end. But, it is what it is, right?
I mean, I'm going Guardians Dodgers. I just don't want it to be Yankees Dodgers.
I think there's a realistic chance you get the New York World Series again. I really do.
That would be interesting, and I'm curious as to who wins it this time because I think the Mets have the better team.
Mets, again, the Mets, if you want to play it seems like the teams for the most part that have been hot since the All-Star break have done better in the postseason. Not always true, but it for the most part has played out that way. The Royals had a better record in the second half than the Orioles, Tigers over the Astros. The Guardians are an exception over the Tigers. But the Yankees had a better record over the Royals, and we can go on this path even more. So just based on that, yes, the Mets would seem like they would be the favorite over the Yankees. Um, but I'm only gonna bark up that tree if we get to that point.
As far as winning the World Series, Vegas has Cleveland at plus 500, so actually less than the Mets, and has the Yankees at plus 165. For the championship series, it has the Guardians at plus 172 and the Yankees at minus 205. And then for the NLCS, since I didn't give those earlier, plus 148 for the Mets and minus 174 for the Dodgers.
So the Yankees are actually favored more to beat the Guardians than the Dodgers over the Mets.
That's probably because of the trend that I think that's the Dave Roberts effect. Let's be honest. But the thing is, though, I don't think Aaron Boone is a better manager. That's a discussion for a different time. But I don't think he's a better manager than Dave Roberts. But
I mean, things have worked out for both of those managers so far, but I'm going to wrap it up here because I think we've well exerted our quote unquote quick video. I was combining the words quick and short and came up with court. So, but our quick video is well beyond the quick timeline. Yeah. If you want to listen to more of our episodes or previous episodes, you could check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else you'd listen to your podcast. Check out our other
YouTube.
The rest of our episodes and shorts on YouTube. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. That'll do us for here at Big League Breakdowns. Expect our next video to come out when the championship series has wrapped and the World Series has started or is about to start. Until
Remember
then,
like and subscribe and wear your seatbelt.
Like and subscribe, wear your seatbelt, and have a good evening.